If anyone's planning on addressing the commission, please fill out one of these yellow comment cards and then place it in the basket right here. If you plan on addressing the subcommittee tonight, please fill out a yellow speaker card and put it in this basket right here. When you're talking, you'll hear 2 dings. The first ding means you have 1 minute left. Second ding means your time is done, and you'll see a timer at the top of the screen indicating how much time you have left.
It is 4:12 p.m. on August 6th, 2025. I will now call this meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Cultural Art Grant Fund Subcommittee meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Dolan.
Here.
Commissioner Miller. And Commissioner Ward.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum.
That brings us to approval of the agenda. Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
I have received no changes to the agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. This item is approved. We will now move to the approval of the minutes from the September 16th subcommittee meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes from the September 16th, 2025 subcommittee meeting?
I have received no changes to the minutes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say no. This item is approved. We will now move on to member reports. This is a discussion item for the subcommittee, and no public comments will be taken related to this item. Commissioner Miller, do you have any member updates you would like to share?
Nothing for me at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dolan, do you have any member updates you would like to share?
No, none at this time.
I have a member report I would like to read. To the community, you are the reason this public subcommittee meeting is happening today. Almost a year ago, on October 14th, 2024, this subcommittee and the full PRAC Commission, along with the Fresno Arts Council, tried to make that happen, and we were not successful. It took strong community advocacy to get that changed. You did this, and we thank you. I have listened to the public comments that were made over the past few PRAC meetings several times, and the calls for transparency, accountability, equity, and change have been received. Through this meeting today, the Cultural Arts Subcommittee is able to publicly share the information we reviewed from each applicant that identifies the zip codes and narratives submitted about the areas served by their organizations and projects. These past few PRAC meetings have been difficult and necessary. Fresno has a history of bringing community members into advisory councils, committees, and commissions, often to create specific plans and reports that span hundreds of pages. but are sitting on a shelf somewhere gathering dust. As a community member, it is frustrating to not see Measure P being implemented as hoped and expected. The city's park score has dropped since the tax was enacted, and on the park side of Measure P, its lion's share, change is happening, but slowly. On the art side, we have the opportunity to be more responsive, to make changes each year. You saw this last year. Right after year one funding went out, the guidelines were revised to address issues raised by the Downtown Fresno Partnership, as applicant Elliot Balch noted in public comment last week, revised to address concerns about more limited funding availability in coming years, implement changes to ensure Fresno resident artists and culture bearers are prioritized by applicants, with all parts of grant-funded activities taking place in the city, and revised to require that all applications include identification of who will be served and in what parts of the city each applicant will be providing services. That change was made to address commissioner and community concern that zip codes and communities served by applicants must be considered before proposed funding allocations are recommended by the Cultural Arts Subcommittee and approved by PRAC to confirm they meet the Measure P mandate as follows. Funding for operating support shall support organizational stability for arts and cultural organizations that reflect the cultural, geographic, and demographic diversity of the city of Fresno, and reflect the proportion of each grantee's overall operations that serve the residents within or visitors to the City of Fresno sphere of influence. These grants shall prioritize organizations and programs that support and expand diverse public or youth engagement and equity. Further, in response to commissioner and community feedback, the Year 2 revisions added the policy that award allocations will be recommended by PRAC with the intent that these investments recognize, reflect, and support the cultural, demographic, and geographic diversity of all parts of the city of Fresno. Now the public has the data that was made available to the subcommittee when we made the proposed recommendations for Year 2 EAAC grant funding. There are many different ways of looking at that data, and I hope we can receive concrete feedback on equity concerns and ideas and recommendations about how they can be considered and addressed moving forward. More than 30 years ago, the cultural arts community in Fresno had very similar debates and conversations around the predecessor tax to Measure P, the Arts to Zoo sales tax that was created in 1993 and dismantled in 1995. As I noted at the July 17, 2023 Commission meeting, where the revised cultural arts plan was introduced, the Arts to Zoo measure included specific funding formulas that favored 4 named organizations. 50% of the total dollars went automatically to the Fresno Chaffee Zoo, the Fresno Art Museum, the Fresno Philharmonic Orchestra, and the Fresno Metropolitan Museum. It did not provide cultural arts investment funds to be available on equitable terms, with a negative impact on cultural art organizations from underrepresented and historically underinvested communities. Those historical mistakes must not be repeated. There are many differences in how the cultural arts component of Measure P was crafted as compared to the Arts to Zoo predecessor tax. When current EAAC applicant Hugo Morales prepared his equity analysis of the Arts to Zoo funding distributions 31 years ago, published in the Fresno Bee on June 22, 1994, he identified the majority of award recipients as predominantly white-controlled or white-serving, without the support of specific data. And a lot of subsequent news articles and opinion pieces from that time period include arguments about who in the community benefited from those organizations and their activities. That is different with Measure P. The Fresno Arts Council recently completed collecting the demographic information from all Year 1 EAAC grant recipients about who their Measure P grant-supported work served, and they will be reporting that data to the city and to the commission. The PRAC will make this data available to the public so that it can be reviewed and analyzed by everyone. That grant recipient reported data includes the following: attendance data, separating out youth up to age 17, adults age 18 to 61, and seniors age 62 or older, participant zip code data to identify the number and percentage of Fresno residents served, race, ethnicity, household income, and gender identity, and for murals, the total square feet installed and their address or location. Further, the EAAC grant agreement with the Fresno Arts Council withholds the final 10% of the grant award from recipients until their final report is timely submitted. Those grantees who did not timely complete their final report forfeit the last 10% of funding, and those contracts bar those recipients, including both applicants and their fiscal sponsor where applicable, from applying for new EAAC grants for a period of 2 years. The PRAC can receive the data from the Fresno Arts Council on the EAAC grant awardees in year 1 who failed to make the final reporting requirement, including the forfeited dollar amount, which was rolled back into available funding for future grant awards, and make that public as well. The public has a right to this information about taxpayer dollars and has an important role in holding all aspects of Measure P implementation accountable. For the cultural arts grant process, a part of that accountability includes identifying what needs to be addressed and changed to make the program better each year. The Cultural Arts Subcommittee was not directly involved in year 1 or year 2 grant review panel processes, but that will change for year 3 and future years. It is clear that it was an imperfect process, and as our eyes and ears, the community has brought several important and valid concerns to the forefront. Many aspects of that process need to change. There are public allegations of facilitator bias, as noted by applicant Johannes Reinders in his public comments on September 15th and 29th, with statements made by the Fresno Arts Council staff on August 1st at the Emerging Project panel session that favored art over culture. Former PRAC commissioner and panelist Christina Soto shared similar concerns with me late Friday, August 1st and on Sunday, August 3rd, and also identified that the panel review meeting schedule was not widely available. I spoke with the Fresno Arts Council staff about those concerns the morning of Monday, August 4th, and that day, the panel review schedule was posted to their website. It also appears staff comments made at the August 8th established project panel and the August 13th emerging project panel discussions were of a different nature. However, the Fresno Arts Council does have a role as a contracted service provider and facilitator staffing those panel review meetings to answer clarifying questions raised to them by review panelists to comply with the panel review process as it exists under the current guidelines. I also received applicant feedback privately that some panelists did not appear to have read all of the pages and attachments of their applications, and the alleged panelists showed bias towards or against certain applications by voting their values instead of scoring applications based on the merits of the application contents. This subcommittee has no access to the recordings FAC staff made of the review panels, has not listened to them, and cannot assist members of the public with their requests for access. However, I do want to note that this alleged panelist bias would not show up on a recording and is just as problematic. Bias by anyone involved in the review panel process is unacceptable and compromises the integrity of the EAAC application scoring. We all deserve better and will make changes so that those issues are addressed. However, the final say on the allocations of EAAC grant award funding is held by the full PRAC Commission after this subcommittee receives the scores and makes a recommendation. As community member Nefesha Yisrael noted during her public comment on September 29th, we need to work together to build a better process with stronger checks and balances, one that's responsive and proactive. Community, the Fresno Arts Council, and the PRAC need to commit to a collective problem solving that enables the EAAC grant program to continue to expand access to art and culture in meaningful and transformative ways. The minutes of the subcommittee meeting on September 16, 2025 identify some of the proposed changes going forward so that missteps around neutral facilitation, conflicts of interest, bias, and unclear communication to applicants about the application review process are corrected. Implicit bias and cultural competency training are necessary. Anonymizing applicant identity and fiscal sponsor identity would be a positive change. And it is, in my opinion, that we need to both strengthen the conflicts of interest process and find ways to include more panel review members with cultural arts grant review experience. For several years, I have asked if there's a way we can include panel review participants from outside of Fresno who have arts and culture grant review experience. I see this as something that will bolster the integrity of scoring by reducing conflicts and bias and adding much-needed neutrality. I believe that bringing in geographically diverse panelists who have this cultural arts grant review experience should be viewed not as a threat, but as a guardrail to help ensure that application scoring outcomes are stronger and can withstand scrutiny. This is something we heard community feedback on in public comment at the September 15th PRAC meeting, with applicant Elizabeth Laval in favor and applicant Ome Lopez strongly opposed. In my opinion, the work that Dolce Up Front is doing is an extraordinary act of community care. Their efforts to expand access, educate potential EAAC applicants, and encourage conversation about the EAAC grant program and process should be respected and commended, as we have heard from several of their fiscally sponsored applicants in the public comments. Fiscally sponsoring 90 applicants, 70 of whom submitted LOIs, 30 that had eligible applications scored, and 17 applications selected for a proposed award is incredible. It also highlights a need to make sure that we have more neutrality in the composition of panel reviewers. The conflicts of interest policies in the panel review process must be made stronger because the current conflict screening process is insufficient to ensure that scoring outcomes are free of bias. At an upcoming PRAC meeting, the Fresno Arts Council will make the full presentation of data they gathered about the demographics of the review panelists, and Lilia will be able to explain to the public, as she did to our subcommittee, that when the Arte America application is discussed by the review panel, she physically leaves the building to mitigate the conflict. At that meeting, she will share that there will be focus groups conducted of established and emerging applicants to review the guidelines and policies together to recommend future changes, which will be supplemented by opportunities for any member of the community to offer perspective, thoughts, and recommendations on other changes to the guidelines and policies. If you feel more comfortable expressing your feedback directly to any commission member or in a public forum or to the Parks Director, Erin Aguirre, as a neutral alternative, please do so. New EAAC guidelines and policy revisions cannot go to the City Council for consideration and adoption before December, so that is the timeframe for making the Year 3 process improvements. This is unfolding on a continuum, and we all must just keep showing up. I'm certain that Year 3 will bring to light new challenges, and we will then work together collectively to address them. However, at this time, we are bound by the existing process and the EAAC guidelines and policies as adopted by City Council on January 30th, 2025, as we consider the Year 2 proposed grant funding allocations to recommend to PRAC and the accompanying appeals. Thank you. That brings us to the next item, which is ID 251361, proposed funding allocations for EAAC grant awards. Because we have more than 10 public individuals here to make public comment, we will be reducing the amount of time available to 2 minutes per speaker. So would any member of the public like to make a comment regarding this item? You'll have up to 2 minutes for comment, and I'll start with the cards in front of me. The first up is Maggie Curtis.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Maggie Curtis. My background is I have applied for many grants over the years, some as a nonprofit, some as a independently owned business, some using a fiscal sponsor and some not. I worked on the grant review committee last year and this year both, and I am a little bit appalled that people find this process to have had any bias or have any fault to find with the Fresno Arts Council. From my experience with my grant seeking, I have never had any kind of transparency at all, other than a little bit of notes that I get in return sometimes, letting me know where I could have done a little bit better job explaining what I was looking for. But the fact that people can actually show up to the discussion meetings and listen, and even when we did one as a Zoom, people who had applied were in on the Zooms. That's just unheard of in a grant review process, from my experiences, which has spanned a lot of years. So I don't get this. We're not transparent enough. The other thing is, throughout this whole process, I felt like Lilia was just exercising extreme restraint in terms of her feedback. She would only input if she was asked a direct question. And she never gave an opinion. Sometimes she gave data or facts about an organization, and I thought it was a good idea because it was something that was public domain. We could have opened our computers and looked it up, but by that point, we were already investing. I probably put in 40 hours this year on this review committee, and she cut that time off a little bit by her feedback. But there was no partiality shown. The Fresno Arts Council has done a wonderful job of creating a process it's great.
Thank you. Next, we will have Carolyn Thomas.
I'm the short one in the audience. Oh, thank you. I knew there was some magic involved. Thank you. Commissioners, thank you for having us. I'm Carolyn Thomas, representing Soli Deo Gloria, Fresno's premier women's ensemble. Thank you for your hard work on the grant award proposals, and this is our first year in proposing an EAAC grant, and we have received a lot of help from the Fresno Art Council staff throughout the whole process. And thank you for listening to our comments this afternoon. We are encouraging your approval of the awards and sending on your recommendations to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Julia Copeland.
Hi, I'm Julia. I didn't even know we would be able to speak today, so I didn't prepare any remarks. I just wanted to say I'm a local violinist, art supporter, and Fresno Arts Council board member, and I'd like to thank the PRAC for including us at this meeting. Though, like the last speaker, I have spent many, many years writing grants, and I've never encountered funder transparency, nor have I expected it, but hey, cool. We in the local arts community are grateful for Measure P funding, which last time I spoke here, I compared to sliced bread positively. I still think it's the best thing since, and congratulations to everyone who brought this into being. I do hope the city will be able to release funding expeditiously to approved recipients, and I should add that I'm impressed by the flexibility of this committee and of the Arts Council and the City Council as all work together to improve the funding process. I'm proud that we in the arts community have been able to show some truly impressive results of just the first year of Measure P Arts funding, and I count on our being able to explain ever more clearly to the public how unprecedentedly fantastic and, in fact, life-changing this 30-year funding will continue to be. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Lillian Banderas for Hugo Morales.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Lillian and I work for Radio Bilingüe. I am delivering this comment on behalf of founder and co-director Hugo Morales, who cannot be present today since there is no Zoom option for the meeting. We urge the subcommittee to release additional funds into the pool to support additional emerging project support applicants. This program category received the most applicants with 114 eligible, representing 58% of the total submissions, yet only 61 or 54% of them are recommended for funding, compared to the other three categories in which 86 to 96% of the applicants are recommended for funding. Applicants did not have the same odds of success, which is unfair, especially considering these are relatively small groups, many using physical sponsors, and are already on uneven playing field in terms of staff capacity for writing proposals. To remedy this inequity, we propose bringing in all those scored in the 3 range in the emerging projects to be funded at 30% of the request. This would add another 32 groups and require an additional $442,577, bringing up the percent funded to 81%, much closer to the percent funded to the other 3 categories. At the September 15th PRAC meeting, we noted the $11.4 million in arts and culture funding available this fiscal year, of which only 6.3 is slated for distribution to this grant cycle. It appears there are additional resources that could be utilized. Let's bring greater equity to the process in this cycle to fund more of the emerging projects and work on changes to address guidelines and process improvements in the review for the future cycles. Thank you.
Thank you. As a point of clarification, I would like to note that there is not additional funding available for year 2 grants. Next, we have Joe Catania.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting this little gathering. To tell you the truth, I really don't want to be here, but here I am. I just want to say that after the last meeting, I just took a closer look at some of the recipients of the grants, and something is working in this process. People who got 60%, this is just a partial list, people who got 60% of what they requested: Valley Public Television, Radio Bilingue, Arte Americas, African American Historical Society, Children's Musical Theater Workshop, Latin Jazz Orchestra, Fresno Flamenco and Spanish Arts Society. This is a diverse group. Fresno Opera, Fiestas Patrias, and Lentejan Posada. These are diverse groups in the community serving diverse elements of the community, trying to further culture, arts, accessibility, and experiences that people may not have otherwise. So something is working. That's my opinion. I'm going to hurry up and get out of here and sit down. But the people who got 30% of their requested funding: Legacy and Heritage of Chinatown, Black Youth Empowerment Program, Boys and Girls Club, Kids Arts Experience, Iranian Culture and Art for Community, Gender Euphoria, Trans and Gender Expansive Artists Exhibition and Community Art. Something is working here. There may be a need to reevaluate, reassess, and try to come up with a better program next year. But the diversity of these groups that got funding is unquestionable, and their impact on the community is unquestionable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joseph Rodriguez.
Hello, my name is Joseph Rodriguez. I represent Art Mart Fresno. We applied through Dulce Upfront for Measure P for grant. Unfortunately, we were given 0%. I guess we didn't ask for the money in the correct manner. It's a question of emerging organizations being the most emerging. We formed Art Mart Fresno this year in May. We held our first event, and it was an event tailored to artists. Only artists and crafters could be a part of our event. And we made it so that the community could come and support a small group of people that is the creatives of Fresno that don't have a brick and mortar, that don't have large support, that are trying to follow their dreams. And it's something of a big question mark. How do you get the money? How does it all work? Well, we went through the process, and unfortunately, we'll just have to try again next year. But we hope that the transparency of what's going on with backdoor deals and any kind of, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And we were actually approached by someone with authority who asked us if we had filled out a Measure P proposal. To our answer, which was yes. And we were told, well, let us know when you send it, and we'll make sure you get full funding. And me and my partner were kind of shocked. We ended up not following that route because we felt like it was disingenuous to our merit of our request for Measure P funds. So we didn't follow that route, and we ended up not getting any funds. And a part of me wonders, wow, if we would have maybe let someone know when we send our proposal off, we would have gotten fully funded. And so for us, that's what we want to say.
Thank you. Next, we have Ashley Morales Guerrero.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I come before you today as a Measure P panelist, applicant, and potential awardee, but also as an artist, business owner, and someone who has had the privilege of creating and administrating national grants throughout my career. I already shared my personal concerns with the Art Council following our panel sessions, and I spoke publicly during the Artist Coalition press conference on September 25th. So today I won't repeat any of those points. Instead, I want to speak plainly about what has been unfolding since, which I see as a blatant abuse of power and the use of control tactics meant to pacify and silence community voices. It's deeply concerning and frankly disrespectful to witness this level of disregard when what we are talking about here are public dollars. These are my dollars, the community's dollars, and taxpayer dollars. When marginalized artists and organizations say we want transparency, we want equity, we want what was promised, the response from leadership has been, we'll fix that next year. What you're really saying to the people of Fresno is this: your tax dollars can be our experiment and we'll get it right eventually, but only after the power players get theirs. This message is loud and clear. The program is called Expanded Access to Arts and Culture, but right now the access being expanded is only for those who already know how to play the game, who already have access, and who know the right people. I have found myself questioning my own privilege, wondering if who I know has impacted my own recommended funding. If fairness and equity are not the sole guiding light in this process, then it is time to pull the lever and stop the conveyor belt from moving forward. Measure P is a long-term investment with 28 years remaining, and that doesn't give us the luxury of ignoring injustice now. When inequities surface in the first 2 years of a program, we don't smooth them over. We need to address them immediately before they become systemic and before they grow into something that we cannot fix. Let's be clear, this isn't a winners versus losers issue. The gossip, the finger pointing, the defensiveness, it's a distraction because right now we are all losing. We're losing trust, we're losing integrity, and we're losing the opportunity to build something truly equitable and transformative for Fresno's vibrant art community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Stephen Wilson.
Good afternoon. Stephen Wilson from the Fresno Philharmonic. First of all, I just want to thank the members of the subcommittee and the Fresno Arts Council for all of the time and work they've put into this year's grants. I also want to commend Chair Ward for the thoughtfulness of your comments this afternoon. The grants this year, as recommended, will do phenomenal things for the citizens of Fresno, and I encourage you to approve them as recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Johannes Reinders.
Thank you. My name is Johannes Reinders, and I do want to thank the subcommittee for finally obeying the Brown Act and finally having this meeting in open session that the public can attend. And I also want to thank Commissioner Ward for your comments earlier. I understand that this is a position where you feel like people with complaints are never satisfied, and I want to be very clear: we absolutely will be satisfied. When the subcommittee meeting is obeying the Brown Act as it should be, we will be satisfied. When the facilitators of the panel are actually only facilitating and they're not volunteering their own opinion, as I have multiple transcripts of volunteering their own opinion, not answering direct questions, but inserting their opinion constantly as a panelist, we will be satisfied. As well, I fully understand, and it is appropriate, that we are bound by the existing process. I cannot stress enough that all of the individuals that have concerns that have voiced concerns last meeting before, we are not complaining about the process. We are complaining about the process not being followed. This is an issue of violations to the Brown Act. This is an issue of violations to accessibility, of people not being allowed to record or not being allowed to type on their electronic devices. This is a violation on the basis of fraud of taxpayer dollars, as individual staff members who are not panelists directly influence this process. This is the reason we're asking for a pause, because we're asking for like a redo. It has to be a redo because this is fraud legally. And again, with the 60% funding, I notice that all the recommended is only to fund 60%. What concerns me is a quote that I actually listed earlier. Well, we need to diversify our grant program here because people are applying for the full $50,000 amount when they don't need it. They just go for the max amount that they can. That is a quote directly from Dr. Chavez of Fresno Arts Council. That was not asked, that was not a question that was answered, that was inserting their opinion on Friday, August 15th at 5:05 p.m. We have to redo this process. It is fraud. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Alicia Rodriguez.
Hi. I had a few things to say, but I'm going to use my 2 minutes to speak to you like a human being. I was hiking yesterday and I was thinking, what is the root issue here? And it falls back on a couple of things: integrity and transparency. I was awarded both years. I was recommended for funding last year, 80%, 90% and 100% for the two we applied for, and this year at 60%. I did attend the panel reviews where our proposal was reviewed, and this is just for information, they were all pretty positive reviews. Still, we ended up with barely above a 5. In fact, one of the panelists did say that they used ours as a benchmark for other proposals. So this isn't a matter of winners versus losers or somebody not understanding the process. It's a matter of how close is the process being adhered to. And we've heard the comments. I want to really emphasize this is not to be facetious. I'm not here on a Monday because I don't have anything better to do. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Like, I love the arts because I'm a human being. My background's in science. So it's really hard for me I get lost on the lack of congruence with what we're saying and what we're doing. And I think those have to match. You did give some great comments earlier. You gave a great intro at the last meeting. I want to see that adhered to. Today we're at a meeting at 4 p.m. on a Monday with very little notice. And I hope that will improve. In fact, I think it should be required that improves moving forward. The community is still being scapegoated for the halt in the process. We're not halting the process. We're pointing out very clear feedback. We've talked about the Brown Act adherence, documented bias, and this isn't to pick on anybody. I have no animosity towards anybody in this committee or in the Arts Council. It's follow the process that's been laid out and follow it with integrity. I was recommended for funding, but integrity is going to rule over the almighty dollar for our organization and our community, and that's what makes people trust you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cami Chipola.
Hi, I'm Cami Cipolla. I'm with the Fresno City and County Historical Society. And I just want to say that one of the things that this process has done, that this grant does, is it allows organizations like ours to fiscally sponsor smaller artists, cultural organizations, people who are invested in our cultural community. We were fortunate enough to be able to fiscally sponsor 5 this year that got awarded. We tried to go for a few more people, but that matters in our community. And sure, over the last several months, we've been hearing a lot on both sides and the way things can go, and I do appreciate your comments that you made today and also at the last meeting. And I personally believe, and our organization believes, that our community is strong and that we can move forward in a positive way. And personally, just being able to fiscally sponsor these smaller individuals who are trying to do great things really makes a difference. So that's it.
Thank you. Next, we have Christina Soto.
I think we've heard and communicated a lot over the last 2 months about the gaps in this process, so I'm not going to focus on that. What I'm going to say is that I think this meeting is a joke, honestly. I think the fact that it wasn't made accessible until a few hours ago, it's a joke, and we are the punchline. The community is the punchline because of all the suggestions that we have offered to the PRAC, to the subcommittee. What you took from it was what was the least suggested. I mean, holding 10% of funding, when you're funding a project, when you're recommending funding at 30%, you're setting people up to fail, and then you're going to punish them by taking away their ability to access funding for 2 years. I want everybody to think about that. If you were suggested for funding at 30%, how are you going to execute your projects at 30%? And then you will not be allowed to access funds. For people, saying that this is transparency, we don't do that anymore. These are public funds. These are not private grants. Public funds require transparency, and that is why we need this subcommittee to be a standing committee, because otherwise they will continue to give us the bare minimum, which is having open meetings and notifying us the day of during work hours, which I had to take time off of work to be here, by the way. So again, it's a joke. We are going to continue to keep showing up. We are going to continue to keep showing up to hold you accountable, to hold the city accountable. This is our money. The process needs to be fair, and the guidelines need to be followed.
Thank you. As a point of clarification, Clerk, could you speak to when the meeting notice was posted and if it complied with the Brown Act?
The agenda was published on Friday afternoon. Brown Act requires for a regular meeting 72 hours notice, and this did meet that time frame.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Kyle Lopez-Schmidt.
Good evening, everybody. Kyle Lopez-Schmidt, Executive Director of the South Tower Community Land Trust. We were a successful awardee last year at 80% funding and completed our mural on time, on budget. This year we're recommended for 60% funding, which is amazing. However, I feel that if the process would all be equal, there's some things that I think are worth noting. I was able to attend many of the review sessions. Our session where our project was reviewed, only one panelist was present, versus other segments of projects had 4 or 5 panelists present. So already there's an unequal process between different segments of the review panels. And within our review panel, the one panelist was starting her remarks with how great she thought our budget was. In reflection, looking back at other budgets, ours was really a standout, and she wanted to raise our score on our budget. At that point, Lilia interrupted her and said, actually, that budget is quite inflated. Did not go into it, and then later into the process, she went into a monologue around why our project was over budget, why murals should only be $65 per square foot, information not shared on any other mural project that I witnessed review for. And that was all based on the premise if she did the math wrong of only calculated half of the area of our mural. So that level of bias against our project was also built upon incorrect information. So that was hard to witness for our own review, but also other projects I reviewed similar things that affected scoring. And I don't think you can trust the scoring that you have in front of you. Specifically, I don't think you can trust the scoring across project categories that had different review processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dallas B.
Hello, my name is Dallas Blanchard. I was a panelist who scored some of the grants, and I'm the CFO of a nonprofit that has state, federal, and local grants totaling $500,000 a year. So I know a little bit about grants and grant compliance, et cetera, et cetera. I became a panelist to see the other side, to see how things are scored. And I had some concerns. We had a 2-hour training that went much more into the history of of Measure P, which if you're going to be a panelist, I think you already know the history of the group or the funding source that you're going to score. Very little on the scoring. They said, here, read this nearly 50-page document, which had very little on scoring. So, I sat down and did my best and came up with the scores. Then I show up to the in-person thing, and Ms. Chavez starts adding additional things, talking about the budget and how much people get based on different things. And I'm like, shouldn't we already know that before we have already scored our stuff? So, I had a lot of concerns about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Susan Filgate.
Hello. I'm the education director at the Fresno Art Museum, and I'm here for Michelle Ellis-Pracy, who could not make it this evening. She is out of town. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has worked on this, and I think there are some misunderstandings about Fresno Art Museum and some of the other legacy organizations in Fresno. We do serve a lot of the underprivileged, and we personally at the museum serve over 6,000 third graders every year and their families. And we invite anyone to come to the museum on our family days and see the kind of crowds that we do get, and from everywhere in Fresno. So that's one thing that I think needs to be really clarified. We do serve the whole community. And I wish that, I think this is a great organization, this is a great measure, and a lot of major cities support the arts, and their museums, their symphonies, that sort of thing. And we hope that you can get this passed through and fund all these organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Smiley.
Thank you, Subcommittee. We're just hopeful for transparency in this process, and hope we get the funds released soon, but we also realize that people feel a sense of disenfranchisement that we need to address now and not just postpone it. There's been a lot of concerns raised, and I think that, I hope that the subcommittee recognizes those so that we can move forward in the future years with what PRAC is about, with the funding of arts here. Everyone here loves arts. And so we just want to make it transparent. We want it to be fair. We've seen some discrepancies, and we just need it to be addressed. So this meeting, actually, like people have already said, has been kind of impromptu. I know that on Friday you posted it, but I mean, it's kind of a weak post about it. So hopefully we can address this. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next, we have Christina Soto. Was it for this item? Next item, okay. Is there any member of the public who wished to make a public comment who has not yet had the opportunity and would like to fill out a yellow card to pass to the clerk at this time? Okay, I don't see anyone coming up, so at this time we will close the public comment. Is there any member of the commission subcommittee who has any questions or comments regarding this item? Okay. Are there any motions to take action on the proposed funding allocations for the EAAC grant awards?
So moved.
Okay, that was a motion to recommend these proposed awards to the Parks, Recreation, and Art Commission for their consideration and action. Is there a second on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. This item is approved. That brings us to the next item, which is ID 25-1362, a discussion of appeals of proposed EAAC grant awards and potential appeal criteria modification and future guidelines update. I have one card from a member of the public to make a comment on this item. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please fill out a card and bring it up to the clerk. At this time, I'd like to call on Christina Soto.
I just want to emphasize the statement that was already made that this process is tainted, and the fact that you all are continuing to move forward and bulldoze through the community's concerns is disappointing, but not surprising considering how, City of Fresno leadership does their business. I think that I don't know if I can ask questions. Why don't you have access to the recordings? The recordings exist. Why haven't you reviewed them? I think it's very obvious if you were to do that, the level of egregiousness that these comments that were offered by FAC, how damaging they were to the point where panelists had to defend their scores and were intimidated and bullied into adjusting their scores up or down based on FAC's feedback. The person that was just up here that said, it cut my job by 40% just listening to Lilia. If that is not bias, if that is not allowing FAC to dictate how people scored applications, I don't know what is. So again, I just want to point out what a joke this all is. And then pushing, again, for this regulation of disqualifying people for 2 years, bringing in an outside panelist, which the community has not asked for. We know what we need. We don't need outside panelists to do that. What we need is an outside facilitator that doesn't have these conflicts of interest. That's what we asked for, and doesn't seem like that's getting, anybody's working on that either. So again, what we're asking for is inclusion, and what you're trying to do is further push us out.
Thank you. As a point of clarification, as mentioned at the last commission meeting, if any commissioner engages in unscheduled debate or discussion, it is a violation of the Brown Act. Next, we have Johannes Reinders.
Thank you, Subcommittee. My name is Johannes Reinders. I want to just echo everything that the previous speaker said, and specifically, I have the privilege of being a government employee. There are numerous times where my office has used, and to this very day, we use third-party contractors, private contractors, nonprofit CBOs. They are doing government work. They are subject to the Public Records Act. Those transcripts, if this subcommittee or members of the commission have voluntarily chose not to listen to quote The Good Place, that's worse. You get that that's worse. But regardless, I formally request this government body, the City of Fresno, for those transcripts. I formally request the Fresno Arts Commission as a third-party contractor of a government entity for those transcripts and recordings. That is what we're asking for. I want to stress again, we are not asking for changes to the current process that we are bound to. We are asking for the current process that we are bound to be followed. These are actionable, legally like actionable violations of misuse of taxpayer funds, of violations of accessibility, of violations of public records. These are suable actions, and I don't want my city to be sued because it's my dollars. However, this is something that where we can ask for every change in the process forevermore. But if this oversight is not enforced, those changes will mean nothing. There will always be someone, maybe not maliciously, but there will always be someone giving it to their friends, giving it to people that they're comfortable with. That the process will always be violated if we do not have this transparency, and that's why we're asking for it. And that's also, we know it sucks. We know it's embarrassing for the city. It's embarrassing for me. I live here. However, we have to redo the scores because this is bad, legally bad. That's what we're asking for. Suck it up and do it again. That's what we're here for.
Thank you. As a point of clarification, I believe Public Record Act requests are done through the City Attorney's Office, and unfortunately our subcommittee is not able to
Sir, I can connect with you afterwards and get you the information.
Thank you. Next we have Kyle Lopez-Schmidt.
Kyle Lopez-Schmidt. Speaking to the appeals, we submitted appeal for the 3 projects, one that was led by ours and 2 that we fiscally sponsored. I believe since our project was recommended for award, we're not qualified to appeal, and I would like to add some recommendations on change there, especially with what we're experiencing on all these partial awards. If there's a project that's awarded partial funding which cannot succeed with what it's being awarded, should be able to appeal. So I'd like to add that. And lastly, I think it's really important that these recordings be part of the record. I have major concerns with how our projects were treated, and was not able to attend the review for the 2 fiscally sponsored projects. So I don't know what was said. I did witness what was said about our project directly, and it was appalling. So I think that's really important. And I think we can't gloss over these conflicts of interest. Conflicts, some of these are personal, interpersonal, but the things that raise to the legal standard of personal family relationships and financial relationships. We've heard about Arte Americas. Leo's other daughter also leads another project that's recommended for funding. I forget the name of it, as well as there's other financial transactions from applicants that are recommended for award during this process, including the Horizon Awards sponsorships. And so Valley PBS, CMAC, and Fresno County Historical Society have all given contributions to Fresno Arts Council during this review process. And I think that's something that needs to be thought about and really provide guidelines on how we deal with financial transactions with this organization that has contracts, has events, and has conflicts in other ways other than just facilitating these grants. Thank you.
Thank you. We have next Aaron Bird.
Hi, my name is Erin Bird, and I am coming up here today as a fiscal sponsor. We had 2 projects that were not recommended for award, and that was OPA a Greek dance experience, as well as the Central Valley Youth Drum Corps. And my concern today with those is after reading their feedback, the comments were so contradictory to each other that it just didn't make sense. The other point was there was a lot of questions around budgets that were clearly explained in the budget notes, where it seems like they didn't actually read the budget notes, which would have completely explained and broken down to them the cost of drum equipment, the cost of traditional Greek dance attire, and why it's needed to make this an experience for the people that they're serving. And so my hope is that we look at things and say, for those two in particular, go back, look at their budgets, look at the data and why they're requesting what they're requesting, because their scores, I don't think were in alignment if the full application would have been read completely. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public who would like to give comment on this item who's not yet had the opportunity to fill out a card and bring it up to the clerk? Seeing none, at this time, we will close the public comment. Does any member of the Commission Subcommittee have questions or comments regarding this item? Okay, I just wanted to note that the current appeals criteria language is very narrow and very opaque. It is language that the Pratt Commission had not recommended. We had taken it out after year one and recommended that broader language apply for appeals. However, when it went through the process where after we recommended it to the City Council did modify that, and they reinserted the very narrow, very opaque appeal criteria language. So that is what this subcommittee applied when we reviewed the 12 appeals that were included. Again, the subcommittee only makes recommendations to the full commission. We don't have decision-making authority. So when we reviewed them, we did not find, that the criteria had been met that was based on the current appeal language. But I did include with the materials today language for consideration for those forward-looking changes that we've been discussing. I thought that the appeal language that's currently used by the City of San Francisco's Grant for the Arts program is much easier to understand, and it would also give a process to some of the issues that we have been discussing over the last month around conflicts of interest influencing an outcome, and also language outside of the application itself being considered and affecting the appeal. And I thought that we could really learn from that and benefit from having more of that included in this process for the EAAC program when it is time to revise the guidelines. Thank you. This is just a discussion item, so we will close that item at this time. And that brings us to adjournment. The time is 5:13 p.m. and because she was a member of the prior iteration of the Cultural Arts Subcommittee, we would like to also adjourn this meeting in memory of Dr. Francina Puda. Thank you.